Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Friday, July 5th. We are on the European account. We need to re-roll something, win 2 games in Econos, or play Pirates. Let's give it a playing Pirates, that's not likely to happen. Then that puts me where I can just win 2 games with Warlock to get these 2 done, and we need to defeat the Great Heist bosses 3 times. I believe we also need to win this tavern brawl. Because the way of tavern brawls have changed, we'll be doing a tavern brawl every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday now, which should not bite me in the butt ever, unless I manage to stream for the 1 hour that it is not available. So this tavern brawl, you discover a card, it gets added to your deck, otherwise your entire deck is full of just chickens and buffs, small buffs, and coins. So we'll start with this. This is a good starting point. We'll play this, we'll play the coin, and we'll want to go ahead and give this one health. So what this is going to do is shuffle these 2 chickens back into this deck. So there should be 8 cards. Then I'll draw like 4. Well, now I have 4 cards. So yeah. How this all works out is a little confusing, certainly, but it will make sense. We've got some games, although not a lot. I already see the end of the road. I can see the Humble Store tab on my browser, so it'll be about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and we'll be done with all the news. It's a slow Friday still, so it makes sense. We have a game here called Project Cybertronic that just came out. It looks a little bit like a mech game in space, although it is particularly dark and there's arguably a lot of stuff on the screen. It's a lot of heads-up display. So there might be a game here or there might not. What I'm not really seeing is enemies that you're shooting at or anything like that, so it feels like this might be an unfinished early access, probably a bit of an asset flip game. It wouldn't be hard at all to have something like that.
Almost out of time.
So this would be a terrible card to play.
I will enjoy watching you die.
So Cybertronic is early access. It's $13.37. It's multiplayer only though, so that explains why we don't see any enemies. It's English only as the language, which really, if you're going to make a game that looks like a mech game, you should have some form of support for a Japanese audience, because they're the creators of mechs and the lovers of mechs way more than anybody else. The fact that this game is multiplayer means it doesn't go to my follow list. I'm not going to play a multiplayer only game. I have no way in my mind of reviewing those type of games. Seemed like it was 5 minutes after last Wednesday's stream that this came out. Gamer Central has this article. Zektronic's games are now free to public schools and educational nonprofits. They don't have demos or anything, so you basically have to email them and tell them there's a list of things they want you to apply and say, to tell them you're a teacher here. They're gonna probably verify that you actually are a teacher there at that location, and they probably will do some common sense verification to see if your position would justify you wanting to get Steam keys for all their games. And my guess is it, particularly if you were going to go do this and you are a legitimate teacher, either an educational nonprofit or a public school teacher, you're going to need between 30 and 100 licenses, Steam keys, because you're going to have to make a Steam account for every computer, and then you're going to have to make a different Steam key to activate each of those games for every computer. So if your computer lab has 30 computers in it, you need 30 Steam keys. If you have 3 computer labs and that gets up to 100, that would make sense. Now, arguably Zektronic's games, which include Opus Magnum, which is the Alchemy computer programming game, and Exapunks and TIS 100, they're all programming games, so it makes sense that they should be available. But I think kids would probably mostly want to play Opus Magnum, and I'm not sure that there is a significant amount of content there that you can educate around or really do much around at all. The thing about educational software, and this is better treated in the Minecraft educational mode, and it's nice to see that game companies are trying to get into schools and be more educational, because most of the educational games and software are so that there's no good lesson, as it were. No lesson plan, no lessons, no checking to see if they really understand what's going on. And even Zektronic says directly, it's like they are not designed as teaching tools, and it advises educators to spend some time playing them before introducing them to young minds. So, like, they're fine games. They're not particularly violent games at all. Opus Magnum's not violent. I would say Exapunks maybe is a little like robot on robot violence, but that's it. Like computer program on computer program things. Home schools and private for-profit schools are not eligible, although private for-profit schools can request discounts. It really almost comes down to, these would be the kind of games that, in my previous experience, would be on a library computer, where if you want to play on the computer instead of reading a book in the library, that's an option just to keep you somewhat quiet. That was my experience with library computers. And certainly public libraries are a center for people who don't have access to computers at their house or access to the internet. So in general, it's nice that Zektronic is doing this, but it is also worth mentioning you're getting free games that are somewhat educational and probably a lot more fun than the actual educational games. But this is not going to teach anybody to be a real programmer. It'll teach very basic concepts and ways of thinking. This probably are games that you would want to introduce to a 6th grader, I would guess, like end of elementary, beginning of middle school, not something that you would want to be teaching to a high school kid who should be at that point learning actual C++ programming or Python. A lot of the programming
possibilities.
A lot of the programming educational things that are out there use just drag and drop programming elements, and I think oversimplify the concept of programming. but still try to pretend like you're actually programming when you aren't, or when you're programming with such a limited instruction set or code base that the things you can do are super simplistic. I would argue that there is a possibility that the early level drag and drop programming educational things out there already are better to start kids off down the path of learning programming than playing the Zektronic game, which is more obfuscated a little bit. So, but having a whole library of different games might work, because I could certainly see a student not liking one program and really liking the other. And if you want to teach anything, having people be happy with their experience is a big time important factor. I'm gonna lose here. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Yeti, which looks like a MS Paint tanks game where you player versus player. Looks like garbage. It's $1.99, which is too expensive for what it looks like. It's English only, and it's single player only. So this looks like a student project where the student could not animate or get anybody to animate anything, and probably isn't programming it in a modern engine or anything that would make it run well. It definitely does not look like a game that deserves to be on Steam, though, or available for purchase as a standard just game. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Get a job. Disruptor Beam is hiring a senior game designer. That is in Framingham, Massachusetts. I don't see a lot of jobs in Framingham, Massachusetts. Oh, let's see. Don't really have anything else to do it. Let's see. Whenever you cast a spell, summon a random 3-cost minion. Transform a random card into a demon. There you go. This. Just trying to get rid of cards, basically, is all you're trying to do. Next we have a game on Steam called Ruin Survival. You can see it's already mixed and it has 21 reviews. It's 47% positive of the verified purchase reviews. This is, it looks like an asset flip first person shooter horror game. It actually doesn't look terrible at all, so it must really play bad, because I've seen way worse asset flip games not get that many reviews. It's early access, $9.99, English and Russian. Again, I don't think you call something like this a Russian troll game, though. You don't make a game like this really easily. Even if you made that game once and then sold it multiple times, I still don't think that that's a troll. I think that's the beginning of an attempt of actually selling a product.
Almost out of time.
This story is a little surprising. Komatsu has a article here. Onichan Bara, which is the game where it's the bikini girl with the samurai sword fighting zombies, is one of the main characters. So Onichan Bara Origin launches this fall in Japan. First trailer and latest details. So Here we have apparently the main character. It's an actual samurai guy instead of the girl in the bikini fighting zombies. Is this because this is a PlayStation 4 game and it's already being censored in the full design of it? He is the father of Aya and Saki, who I think are the two main female characters. And as a samurai, he looks cool, certainly. He's not animated amazingly well, but he looks cool enough to fight zombies, but that really changes the game. There's a zombie bosses for Sayaka and Anzu, so you have now the zombies are in the scantily clad. So maybe they've twisted it around and realized, you know what, since you're mostly only looking at the backside of the main character in a third-person perspective game, let's make the zombies the scantily clad ones. Here's what you normally would see in an Onichan game. I guess I need to play. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, health, attack, too late. So maybe it just does some flashbacks and flash forwards in the game. Apparently the two sisters are going to be fighting against each other too. So yeah, maybe there's something to the change. Maybe there's with this new game, or maybe they're just going to show the father in flashbacks and that's it. It says warning and then it says a bunch of Japanese text. Well, I can't read that, I have no idea. So here's the trailer. It seems like they're showing off the music video also. Yeah, it's still a hack and slash game. Still, it would be nice if more of the Onichan games came to PC. There's only one game on PC right now that's available, and a spin-off game in the same universe, which was what was it? Schoolgirls and guns or something like that. It was 4 words, like schoolgirls and something zombies, like SGHZ or something. That it'll be interesting. Almost certainly, the way things are going these days, you will hear something is going to be censored in the Onichan series. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if the Onichan series has been always just teen plus, and it's always just been bikinis and zombies, and it's never gone to any explicit nudity. Right now, it looks like Onichan Origin is only coming out for the PS4, and it seems like not all the zombies are going to be female zombies, or just the bosses will be. So yeah, that series still going, perhaps not as strong as it once did. Let's do this and this. And then play this. Then in the turn. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Birchian Flight Simulator. It looks very empty in the graphics department. Looks just very bad visually for the level of textures that you would want to see in a game like this. It's early access, it's free, I guess, but then there's a music pack for $4.99, and it's English only this is something that in no way appeals. There's plenty of flight simulator games out there. Let's see. This will actually be a great card to just have in your hand always. Next we have a game on Steam that's just a bunch of Asian characters. It's tagged as a card game. I imagine this is a Chinese card game of some sort. The graphics look pretty nice here. Now, we'll talk about it later, but people still are speculating that the censorship in Hearthstone has something to do with China. I personally don't agree with that. I think the censorship has to do with a new artist being in charge and just SJW-ness. Because Hearthstone has already been trying to make a huge push into China and already succeeded to be in China. And I don't feel like that the Chinese censorship board has enough efficiency that they could have sent a message to, I believe it's NetEase that publishes the Hearthstone version in China, saying these need to be censored, or these are the elements we want censored in particular. And I don't see a reason why they would have targeted Hearthstone, which is a pretty big company. So my opinion is Hearthstone was already pre-censored. Like, the fact that there are no skeletons in any of the art in Hearthstone was a pre-censorship to not have that happen, to allow it to be in China. There was a response from Blizzard where they said it didn't have anything to do with China, and I kind of believe them on that. And they also said we may censor some other cards, but we have no immediate plans to do that right now. But almost certainly they're saying they will eventually. If anything, it would be much more believable that they're trying to get into one specific Middle Eastern country, which I would guess would be either the country that is paying to have WrestleMania happen in, I think it's Sudan, but I could be wrong about that. There are definitely some Middle Eastern countries that have very rich people that are playing video games, whether it's legal or not, that are under some form of Islamic-based law that would want more censorship than even China would want. But they also want to be very friendly and make it themselves look like they are a safe and good place to take vacations in. Although arguably, I would say they are never going to be a safe and good place to take vacations in, because you run into the issue of what happens when people take trips to North Korea. They'll do something that is seemingly a normal action to a Westerner that is amazingly offensive. And it's not just Islamic countries, there are also many Asian countries that have kings that you can't insult, and so if you even slightly say something out of turn, you might end up getting thrown in jail. Just major cultural differences on what freedoms a normal citizen has in countries around the world, and I would not recommend anybody go to any country that does not agree upon and give as much freedom as possible to people visiting their country and their own citizens.
I wonder.
So, anyways, that has nothing to do with anything other than Hearthstone, maybe. There, I got a free victory. This card game I've been looking at, it's not very visually impressive as far as the card art. And these could just be all asset flips for the card art. It doesn't look like it's a particularly interesting card game anyways. English is not supported, so it doesn't matter. It's 15% off for $3.39. Single player only, Chinese only. No in-app purchases, no DLC, early access. So it's almost guaranteed to not be a card game that could go anywhere. Alright, now that we are done with the Tavern Brawl, I can just play as the Warlock. I guess in this case I have to play as the Warlock. Ooh, I guess I can't. Can I? We're gonna run into some problems now, I've just realized. So we have this defeat 3 Great Heist bosses, and we need to win with the Warlock one time. The issue is because this is the European account and not the Americas account, I have not done any of the solo adventure. I frankly, at this rate, am never going to do all of the solo adventure. I also haven't done any of the puzzle lab. So,
The greatest criminal undertaking in the history of villainy.
like, I need to pick, I guess, one here, which will be the easiest
We have
one.
recruited an elite band of disenfranchised
Can take the Warlock,
miscreants.
good,
Each have their own as we plunder the
but we've
riches
not
of
done
Bara.
anything here
We will gain.
at all, so
You will begin with
just jump in here and hope I can defeat 3
guards and
bosses.
citizens of Dalaran will rise against us.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called People that's tagged as a strategy action game. Seems like it's just some maybe like real-time strategy game where you're controlling people.
Another busy
But
day.
frankly, it just looks
Next
like
in
an
line.
asset flip game. Not seeing an actual gameplay mechanic. And that's where the video would come in, is that you would want to see how you're actually controlling things and moving things, and it doesn't seem like you are at all. This is early access. It's discounted to $8.99, single player, English only. People has a bad thumbnail too, so it looks like a low effort game. If we were to say low effort games have now stepped up their game and don't look as low effort as they once did, which is probably what we have to believe at this point, is that low effort games have stepped up a lot.
Next.
Tekan, all you've told me is true. You are an instrumental part of our master plan.
You're so sweet.
Let's see. What does this do? Swap the leftmost
Sorry,
cards.
this is the wrong line.
So it's just
Next.
moving cards around.
Waiting can be so tiring, huh?
So, next game we have on Steam here is called Hotel Giant. It's just a build a hotel simulator. Kind of an asset flip game, kind of nothing. It's discounted to $7.99. English, French, and German. That's more languages than most. But there's nothing visually impressive about this that would make me want to play it.
So little time.
What does this do? Gives me coins. Okay. That's nice.
No cutting.
Next, we have a story here from TecRaptor. A PlayStation Network security flaw allows users the use of credit cards without security codes. Is this because they're using some kind of token that was easily stolen or calculated? Let's see if I can read some of this.
What can I blast for you?
Says this article says, while the PlayStation Network requires any purchase to be accompanied with the full card information, including adding in the CVV number, if the hacker has access to the account though they can create a fake payment that when it fails will default to the primary form of payment. This same anonymous contributor informed Multiplayer first that this exploit has been known for over 5 years, and that even when being submitted as a security breach has been brushed off as serving no security risk. So apparently they've been warning PlayStation about this over and over again. And the question to ask here in particular is who is running the transactions for Sony's PlayStation Network, because it probably isn't it probably isn't Sony directly that's doing the credit card verification, but they very possibly are the people that are
You'll have to get back in line for this.
they are
Sorry.
very possibly the people that made the website work that way. And I could certainly see that if you have a failed transaction, it would just default back to the default information on a storefront. The weird thing seems to be that not only does it default back to the basic information, but it defaults back to the basic information in a way that you don't need the credit card verification number anymore. Now, I will argue that TecRaptor is making a bit of a big deal about this, because what this, on the level of scale, is it's not a remote hack. It's, as far as it seems, you have to already have been able to hack or get into the account of the person. So the most common use in which you could do this is you would have stolen somebody's PlayStation already, the actual physical PlayStation, been able to log into their account and secure that account in a way that somebody can't change the password or deactivate the account, and been able to then initiate this attack to purchase a bunch of games. Like, that's
with each victory,
not as easy to do, really.
To enhance your deck.
Like, it really isn't something that's going to happen on a massive scale.
I recommend you stop cheating.
But yeah, this is only just another bit of fuel on the fire of the PlayStation Network not doing its job right, not being up, getting DDoS'd. There's major problems here. And in a weird way, this might be the explanation as to why Sony Interactive Entertainment move their headquarters to California. Is if the solution was, hey, we don't understand tech, we don't understand running a network, we don't understand any of these things, let's get all the geeks, all the nerds in California to come to our office and program better ways. You absolutely need for PlayStation 5 a major improvement on the PlayStation Network, very possibly just breaking backwards compatibility completely, which I think for the amount of improvement that needs to happen, you're going to have to do that. So a whole new PlayStation Network for the PS5 with whole new back-end technology, with a whole new storefront and everything like that, and just completely not integrating it or transitioning the old technology to the new stuff. So, unfortunately, the side effect of trying to fix, very possibly trying to fix your back-end network technology issues by moving to your offices closer to California, the side effect there is that you've got a whole new group of people in charge with a whole different way of how they want to run their business. So seems like the better solution, if that was what they were trying to do, would have been to open a new office in California and have that office specifically centered around doing the online services. If there was just this California-based Sony online services or PlayStation Network services office, that would have made a lot more sense. And I could very well argue that you would have been better off in Redmond, Washington, next to Microsoft, particularly now that Microsoft and Sony have agreed to use Microsoft's backend Azure services to run their servers. It would have been a lot smarter to start an office up in Redmond, Washington, and not down in California, where Redmond is the potential second place for being a center of technology. If anything, maybe in the next few years you'll start seeing a pattern where Redmond, Washington is the place for established technology companies, and California is the place for startup companies that have the new ideas that may just all be built around Bitcoin or something else ridiculous, and not really having a business plan. Moving on, I'm ranting a lot, but I guess it's not a problem since we don't have that much news. Komatsu has an article here. Robotics notes Elite is coming to the West for the PS4, Switch, and PC in 2020, followed by Robotics notes Dash. I think this is probably a rhythm game, if I was to guess. This is from Spike Chunsoft. Let's see if we can watch this trailer and see. If this isn't a rhythm game, then it's just a visual novel. Or it's a mech fighting game. It looks a lot like BattleBots. Wouldn't be surprised if BattleBots actually was by a different name and getting released under a different name these days. Well, I'm seeing a bunch of anime characters and a bunch of mechs. So, who knows what it is? There's nothing here. It says Robotics Notes Elite. Seems like it has branching storylines and fighting. So, half branching storyline, half fighting game with mechs, I guess.
So
Is
many
all I
dark
can
powers.
guess.
So little time.
There we go. I would be a little surprised if something like Robotics nodes became super popular, though. Or that it was a major deal release. There is something in that name that makes it feel just
What can I blast to you?
a little generic. How much health does this guy have? I can't really see over the shining light. Next, Komatsu has an article. Nico Paritian has been announced for smartphones. This is a continuation of a series of cat girls in maid outfits running a maid cafe. It's a gacha game from what I understand, and because of that, it's a little questionable. Like, sure, you've got the light pink hair cat girl in a maid outfit, and then you've got the dark pink girl in a maid outfit, and then you've got the brown haired girl in a maid outfit, but their outfits are kind of standard with just different hints of colors on them. I don't see how you do something where, being a gacha game, where you would have to have a constant increase of new cat girls to collect and unlock, which is what gacha games are. It's a constant increase in what you're getting.
How many fingers do you see?
Unlike Destiny Child, which is the game I play on my smartphone, which is basically the exact same thing. It's just it's not cat girls. There is one cat girl in Destiny Child. Alright, let me think about this. Okay, there's very possibly 3 or 4 cat girls in a collection of probably 150 games, different anime girls to collect. So there's just a lack of variety I think you'd run into really quickly. In comparison, if you're not going for the anime aspect, there is Kleptocats, which is Kleptocats 1 and 2. I've played both of those games, and they have these 2D cats that you unlock, and that's slightly interesting, but not amazingly interesting, even though there are probably 600 different cats you can unlock. They are still flat animations of just cats that all generally look exactly like Garfield in their size and shape. I want to come back out here because I think I did not get a victory there. So when it says win 2 games with Warlock, it doesn't mean inside solo adventure, and when it says win 2 games with any class, it doesn't mean in solo adventure. So there's kind of no reason to continue going down that route. We might come back at the end of this stream and come back to it. But at the moment, we've got better things, more important things to do than play the solo adventure on my secondary account, which with my, I'm gonna say this I guess every stream, my feeling and opinion now is that when the Marvel card game comes out from Second Dinner, which is probably going to come out in beta a year from now, maybe 2, That's going to be the point where I almost certainly am going to get into the beta of that day one and never look back on Hearthstone. And the only thing I could see is I'm giving a very long run up here for people to say, no, keep streaming Hearthstone. We love Hearthstone as you stream it. We love that you're talking about the video game news and the games on Steam, because those things aren't negotiable. Even if I do get into the beta of the Marvel card game, I'm still going to be talking about games that come out on Steam and video game news. So if people do want to comment and say, we love how you're doing your streams now, that's great. I suppose I would listen to feedback, but I really wouldn't. It's disingenuous for me to even say I'd listen to feedback saying get rid of the video game news and the new games on Steam element. It's like, that's not going to happen. I like being informed. I like seeing how many games come out when there is a ridiculous amount of games that are coming out, even if most of them are garbage. There are a few hidden gems we see every now and then. See what next. More and more we're getting news from things that I think are really worth mentioning, games that I think are worth mentioning that are coming to iOS and Android, but there really isn't a great way to play or cover any of these games. And frankly, most cell phone games, even if they do have a good license, don't need to be covered in the way that an expensive AAA game needs to be covered, because they're designed to be played in small bursts and not played to completion, whereas a AAA game, they're designed at least in part for you to play from the beginning all the way to the end. So Komatsu has an article here. Capcom themed card battle game called Teppen is now available for iOS and Android. 8 heroes from the Capcom universes are bound by fate. Let's see if we can see who they are. As a solo player, ranked matches in a Grand Prix versus. The characters are Street Fighter series Ryu and Chun-Li. The Monster Hunter series is Rathalos and Nergigante. Mega Man 10 series includes 10. Dark Stalker series includes Morgan Honestland, which I think that's just one name. Devil May Cry series has Dante. Resident Evil series has Albert Wesker. So, for a card battling game, it seems weird that you would have Capcom heroes. So basically, somebody's a Warlock, somebody's a... let me just pause this for a second, this trailer, and play.
This was not in my contract.
And keep attacking, I guess. Okay. So yeah, I want to show this. So it seems to me like each of these are just heroes. And so instead of having a generic hero of a mage and a warlock like in Hearthstone, you're getting these other characters. And the attack, this is showing these lines of attack and defense, or red and blue. I don't know. Maybe there's a balancing system that's different here. And they're trying to throw a bunch of animation on top of this, but it looks like it's a pretty generic, pretty boring card game. And it doesn't seem like it has spells or traps or anything like that, which you kind of expect. Like, there's some basic things you want to see in a game, in a card game. You want a spell or trap type cards to mess with how the game runs down and plays. Just draw a card. Okay. So working fine. Capcom is kind of known for trying to sell things and license things based on their properties that have been, at best, you could say is mediocre success. Like, the Mega Man series is successful. It's nowhere as successful as the Mario series, though. And they've been stretching and milking the Mega Man series forever. The Resident Evil series is successful, but then it also has a lot of bad Resident Evil series games too. So there's success and losses. Street Fighter series, some of the games are good, some of the games are bad. All of their games are more expensive than they should be. Next we have a game on Steam here called Save the Biros VR. I feel like there was another game that had this word Biros in it. This looks clearly like an asset flip maze maker game. Somebody made a general template that makes mazes, and all of a sudden in the past 6 months we've seen a lot of maze games with some other asset flip garbage. It's VR, it's $3.99, which is too expensive. It's English and French in the language. And we need to get rid of this guy. There we go. Yeah, Save the Biros, not making it to the follow list. Next we have a game on Steam here that's some Asian characters and the word exception, which looks like it's a programming game. An exception error is an error you get in programming, and frankly I think that's all I can explain on it. I actually have gotten millions and millions of exception errors and never was told or explained to properly what it meant. I almost certainly would guess what it means is that you called a function that required like 2 variables. So if it was a function called add that would add the first number to the second number, if you just put in the first number and it was expecting 2 numbers, then that's probably an exception error if I was to guess. But frankly, if you see exception error in any case anywhere, it's just because a programmer typed the wrong thing in their programming, either in the final product or in the process of developing and programming. And mostly it just means ignore it and try to figure out what you did wrong, depending on your compiler and how well it verifies your code. It gets way more complicated when you start getting into object-oriented programming, which is a basic theory, almost religious theory on how programs should be developed, where you make something that can be a function, or it can be a variable, or it can be multiple functions. So an object-oriented programming of making a function called add might have a function where you have the first number and the second number and it will add, but you might have the first number and the second number and then add a third number, and it might in that case add all 3 numbers, or depending on how you program it, it might add the 2 numbers together and then multiply that by the third number, which wouldn't make a lot of sense on the face of it, but would make sense in some situations. Or it could be even more complicated. There could be a third function where it's the first number, second number, and a letter, which might mean something and it might not mean something. Whereas if you're doing the more traditional linear functional style programming, you would have one function that just wanted the first number and the second number, period. You wouldn't have multiple functions by the same name as an object. But there are benefits to object-oriented programming. It's just not the way I was taught, and I think it's overblown as a considered good thing. I really would like to re-roll this overload cards, but since I can't, I'm in a weird position now because I don't know if my shaman deck has any overload cards in it. Alright, it does. So we'll just be playing custom shaman. And I'm moving kind of slowly here, so there's something to be said where I should speed up and wrap up this stream. So anyways, this game Exception is rated very popular, and it's tagged as a strategy programming game. It has a lot of positive reviews. It's $2.36, or $2.63 if I can read the numbers right. It's English and Chinese. It seems like it's a bit of a tower defense programming game. That might work particularly. So I'm willing to put this on the follow list. If anything, I should probably just put it on the wish list, but we'll see. Like, we're getting into a dangerous glut of things that are potentially going to be on the wish list that are programming games. I really only want to cover one programming game per year, maybe two. I don't want to try to do the entire Zektronic catalog in a year. Oddly, that is also the first game today that seems to have made it even to the follow list. So not super surprising. I think in the next 2 weeks we will start seeing a lot more good games coming out, and just a consistent ramp up of quality of games towards the Christmas holiday season. It'll be a slow-paced but pretty consistent ramp up, I think. At least once a week there will be some independent or AAA game coming out. Next game we have on Steam is Stranger Things 3, the game. Now, this is a confusing title because it is a game based off Season 3 of Stranger Things, not that there have been 2 other Stranger Things games from this developer. This is an officially licensed Netflix game, and it's an 8-bit graphics, top-down game. I think it's worth probably playing and putting on the fall list, but it is $19.99, and so that might be way more expensive than it deserves to be. And the one thing I think video games have done well is we have not been suckers for the licensed product. This is, for Netflix, a low effort game, and undeniably. They could have done a lot better. They could have had the voices and the likenesses of all the actors be in the video game. It could have been a full motion video game. There's things that could have been done and weren't done in favor of going with an 8-bit pixel graphics game, which also I get that that's supposed to be a throwback, but I don't think that counts enough to me as a, like, I think that's more of an excuse than a good reason to make an 8-bit graphics game. So I'll put Stranger Things 3 on the follow list, but I also probably would want to pay $5 for it. It's too expensive at the price that they want. Let's see. I want to play all these overload cards because that's what we're trying to do. TecRaptor has an article here. Dollhouse review, lights, camera, murder. Now this game, Dollhouse, last review I saw was it was actually not that good of a game. It's been hyped, particularly by TecRaptor, quite a bit. Clearly they're getting advertising revenue for it. I wish I could find a different news source that I could tolerate to read that didn't overhype certain games in particular. And maybe they're not getting money. Maybe they just get really excited about some games. But Dollhouse in particular was really selling itself on just a simple trailer, and that's it. And when they come down the numbers, they gave it a 6.5 out of 10, which in the video game world it means it's not good, even though they're labeling it good. The summary is Dollhouse has some honestly good mechanics and ideas and can be fun to play in short bursts. It's just repetitive, and its unique multiplayer modes have likely never been played. The pros they have for what was Dollhouse? I forgot the name already. Are clever ideas, great setting, occasionally scary, and some good puzzles. The cons are a forgettable story, repetitiveness, a dead multiplayer, and some bad puzzles. I honestly don't know if I'd even want to get Dollhouse if it was down to $1.99. It is a prime example. It's a real prime example of a game that was selling itself on one trailer and one still image and intrigue and mystery, instead of selling itself on a quality product. Speaking of not selling yourself on quality products, potentially we have a game here called Panda Hero, which looks like a direct Super Mario Bros. Clone with coins and question mark blocks. This actually, in its movement, looks more interesting than most platforming games, but not super interesting, because you see a lot of derivative ideas here, and you don't see anything here that makes us feel like this is a fleshed out, well-designed product. Yeah. This feels like this might have been a mobile game at one point in development. It's $9.99. It's English and German. I suppose I could be generous and put it on the fall list, but almost certainly 6 months to a year from now, it won't have 20 reviews and it won't make it to the wish list anyways. Alright.
Lightning can strike twice.
I should have played that first. That would have been smarter. Whatever. Next, we have a game on Steam called Hero Express. This looks like one of these mobile games where you're driving a car and you can only speed up so much, or you roll the car over and you're trying to do jumps. There was a game like this that integrated also guns in the front and back, where you're shooting zombies to get more coins to upgrade your weapons. Even with that extra element, that game that I tried many years ago wasn't that fun. This doesn't even have that much going for it, and it doesn't look that fun. It's $4.99 and English only. They're saying it's finally available on Steam and Switch. Another great example of a game being able to come to the Switch eShop and get prestige it probably doesn't deserve. And there is no prestige for being on Steam, since everything is allowed on Steam. let's see. Komatsu has an article here. Space Invaders Invincible Collection launches March 26th in 2020 in Japan. So the Invincible Collection, I guess, includes Space Invaders, the 78 black and white version, the 78 colored film version. It wasn't actually color, it was still a black and white screen. They put a transparency of different colors over the screen so that the white colors of the enemies would look like other colors, and it was an interesting little trick to do in the 78 to avoid having to change all the monitors, and in emulation they had to adjust for that. Space Invaders Part 2 in 79, Space Invaders Super Space Invaders 97, Space Invaders Extreme for PC, which is a very different game, and some other games to be on top of that. Also, Space Invaders DX, Space Cyclone, Lunar Rescue. Seems like they're going to throw some other games that are similar to Space Invaders in there. I have yet to meet anybody that was so excited about Space Invaders, though, that they would want to buy a collection. I would buy a collection on PC, sure, if it's cheap, but I probably wouldn't play it very much. It really would be a case of a 30-minute spotlight to show the entire collection, not just to show off a single game. Space Invaders was a big-time deal in 78 when it came out, but compare that to like Donkey Kong that came out in arcades only a few years later, and Donkey Kong has multiple levels, and the levels look different. It's full color. It has way better audio. The amount of technology improvement and just programming improvement that happened in arcade machines was very, very fast, and quite a lot in a very competitive field. And it had to be a very competitive field because you were paying the equivalent of maybe $1,000, maybe $3,000 for these arcade machines that were taking up a considerable amount of square footage in your arcade, and probably using a decent amount of electricity on top of that. So your game, if your game was not constantly getting people to play it, if there was a arcade machine that was only getting a few dollars a day, that's way too little to ever potentially pay itself back. Nowadays, arcade machines arcades are really not even centered around expecting to make any money, it seems. Mostly, if you're going to see a place with arcades, it's like a entertainment center / bowling alley, and they're trying to get you on the food and the drinks and have machines that sell tickets. They're not trying to make their profit by 1 quarter at a time. Moving on, Komatsu has an article. Fishing Star World Tour Physical Edition launches in 2019. This looks like a Switch kid-friendly fishing game. It's coming. It has a physical edition and an eShop edition. Fishing games, I guess, are still popular in Japan, somewhat. It was really only a matter of time, but Japan officially announced that they're going back to whaling to get whale meat and sell it to a small percentage of people who actually buy and eat whale meat in Japan. They never really stopped whaling. They were just pretending like they had stopped and saying it was a research vessel, and they were killing these whales to do research. It's a bad thing, certainly, and I think most citizens of Japan, if they weren't Japanese, would be up in arms complaining about it. But this is kind of the Shinzo Abe Abenomics plan, as I understand it. Is Shinzo Abe is the equivalent of a United States Republican who is all about big business. It's a bad move, particularly for the 2020 Olympics too, because it's something somebody can talk about. But they're going to get away with it too, because there's just so many other controversies going around the world, mostly started by the United States, that it's easy enough to have this happen and not have people really complain very often, very loud.
Elements guide me. Elements guide me.
Toil and trouble!
Looking at me.
Job's done.
Part of the whaling thing is sold as a matter of pride, which is how you get stuck into these traditional things, these regressive mentalities. Is that, well, my father did this and I'm proud of my father, therefore it's a matter of pride that I be allowed to do this thing that my father in a previous generation was allowed to do, which is like just a lack of embracing that the world has changed in a nutshell. Alright, so now that we don't need any more overload cards, let's come over here and double check on this. Yeah, we just need to win 5 games. It will be way easier to come over and play Paladin and see if we can get up ranked. Moving on, Komatsu has a Crystar character trailer. So Crystar, I believe, is this weird PS4 game. It's coming out for PS4 and PC according to these tags, where the character is crying in the trailers. And this is the scene, this is the game that apparently the PlayStation 4 has already had to censor out. So, the bare bottom scene. Now, the idea of looking at an anime character crying, not particularly appealing. This is going to be a dark, spooky type game built around mental and emotional pain, partly, but also it looks like it's pretty much just a generic RPG in the same way. So it's probably trying to do some of the Alice Madness Returns style of presentation. Apparently this is not the trailer with the bare bottom, or I skipped through it. I wouldn't be surprised if there is just a brief bare bottom flash, but whatever. This is the game that was censored regardless, and there's still a lot that I would want to hear about this game because I don't know anything about it. So, well, we're going to wait and see if there's more to say about that, or if not, I wouldn't be surprised if there really isn't too much more to see or say.
Converting stored energy. Converting stored energy.
Gamma Sutra has an article here. Nintendo is, quote, investigating 5G and streaming tech, but refuses to, quote, chase trends. This is almost certainly a response from the shareholder Q&A. No duh. 5G makes sense if 5G gets really, really embraced in lots of places. including Japan, but just around the world in general. Inherently, I think 5G is not a particularly great technology because it doesn't go as far as 4G did. It's faster speeds if you're at shorter distances, but that's really the opposite of the focus that I would have liked to see them do. I would have liked them to stay on the same frequencies and go for longer distances that interact better with each other. What they're opting for here is they're hoping that 5G will work a lot like a Wi-Fi router that would just transmit signal inside someone's home and not put any signal outside of the house that would interfere with the neighbor's Wi-Fi router. And so they're hoping faster speeds with more in nodes and less interference will somehow equal a better experience. Where I think if you took a worldwide perspective and if you were going to do something, you would probably do like the Tesla satellite things that they're trying to put up, where it's just a pretty decent Wi-Fi speed that is being delivered around the entire globe via low Earth orbit satellites, so it covers vast different distances of areas that don't have wires running to them or don't even have cell phone poles. When you get into major cities like Japan, Tokyo in particular, and you're on subways, there's a lot of walls, and 5G very possibly is not going to do well with all of the walls blocking the signals. But also, Nintendo is totally, obviously not going to chase trends. As far as streaming, yeah, if Microsoft could convince them to stream games directly to the Switch instead of making games that run on the Switch, they very possibly would have a better experience in the long run. Much better games. But that's way more complicated and way more internet-based than I think Nintendo would ever be willing to embrace. And if you had streaming game on the Switch, then it makes the Switch less playable when you're in a car, when your kids are in a car, and you're driving across country or something like that, where the signal would be spotty. So you would have to have something like a better version of 5G than what 5G probably is going to be, and streaming technology. So yeah, it really is asking for a ton of improvement or embracing of new technologies and hoping that they work. I think it's pretty obvious that Nintendo has their own plans and they're going to follow their own plans, and the shareholders are not going to really affect them. I've never seen Nintendo actually be affected by shareholders at all. They claim they have 100 years worth of money that they could that they've stockpiled so that they could continue to do business without making any new successes. If anything, if I was a shareholder, I'd be like, I would ask, how is the progress being made on what is it? On the next Metroid game, because that's the thing it seems like they've dropped the ball on. Moving on, Gamester chose an article, developers in GTA clash over the impact of gray market keys on indies. So, what's interesting about this story is this is really a story of the developers' makings. I guess it is news if developers want to constantly bang the drum saying we hate GTA, we hate GTA. Here's a long article saying why we hate GTA or why GTA is bad. Like, yeah, okay. Then you're making news, you're banging that drum. On the other hand, if you're not adding any actual new facts, there's really nothing to say here, and it's really not something that I think needs to be re-reported on over and over again. Like, people that go to GTA probably aren't aware of the problems with G2A and willing to overlook them if they're still going to G2A. They say this started with a tweet with No More Robots founder and Gamma Sutra and former Gamma Sutra editor Mike Rose. So your Gamma Sutra is not even objective here. They shouldn't be reporting on it at all. And it's since spiraled into a change.org petition. Here's a thing that's way more important is just nepotism and cronyism. Like, this person unethically made a company called No More Robots after being the video game editor for some amount of time and gaining relationships and becoming friends with game developers, because that's what all mainstream video game reporters do, is that they become buddies and friends with them instead of staying objective and staying alone. There should be no break here. If you're going to be a journalist and report about video games, at no point can you then go make video games. And it's not a put your money where your mouth is situation at all. This is a admission that, particularly in the video game industry, there is way too much cronyism and way too much I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine situations happening. Otherwise, though, yeah, the GTA story is just, you can try and make a story around it all you want. It's been heard. If people haven't heard the story, it's because they don't care and they're not following mainstream video game journalism anymore. Otherwise, people know about it and people don't care. And that's their prerogative too. If it's a buyer beware, but also it's a buyer try to find the best deal you can. If I go buy something at a pawn shop, while there probably is a significant amount of things at pawn shops that are stolen, it's really not my business or my fault if I buy something cheaper at that pawn shop and it turns out that it is stolen. I guess if somebody finds out, you have to give it back and then maybe chase after the pawn shop for your money back. But there's a difference between knowing that you're buying something stolen, which is illegal in most jurisdictions in the United States, and buying something that has a possibility of being stolen, but you don't know what percentage chance or possibility it is. At least in the United States, I think there's a difference there. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. Former Paradox CEO defends the studio's continuous DLC model as, quote, fair and balanced, a phrase that no one should ever use whatsoever since Fox News took it. So, Paradox continuous DLC. What is Paradox's? Which game are they talking about in particular? Isn't it?
Let me think.
I don't even know what game in particular they're talking about, but I feel like Paradox is one of those space games, and that's still in early access, but is also selling DLC. There definitely is a space game that's doing that. this link just went to a tweet. I guess maybe if I look at Paradox's Twitter explanation. Let's see, they've got a website. We can use that to figure out what games in particular. It's just bad. Alright, here it is. In its model, it means games like Europa Universalis 4, which launched back in 2013, now has over 20 paid add-ons costing a variety of price points. Some people will be very happy with that concept, though. That's not,
Let me think.
if done well, not a bad way to continuously support your existing products. Particularly if your existing products really don't need any kind of update or visual upgrade. The better response, I would say, though, for the former Paradox CEO, who apparently isn't the CEO anymore of Paradox Studios, so you really shouldn't be saying anything, would be to just simply say, if you don't like the DLC, don't buy it. That's the whole point of DLC. Let's see. Vampire Bloodlines 2. I guess that would be the one that people are really afraid of, is if Vampire the Masquerade came out and then it had a constant DLC updates. On the other hand, Bloodlines 2 might be the new Skyrim, so if it did turn out to be the next new Skyrim, it would be rather cool for it to constantly have this kinds of updates and new DLC added to them. Although in Skyrim's case, it's usually free mods and not paid DLC. They also have a Battletech game that they sell in Stellaris Ancient something and Imperator Rome being highlighted as the new releases and coming soon. Let's see. I'm clicking the browse button, and because I won't accept cookies, the browse button will not work on their website. Alright. I don't think on the face of it I can really complain too much about something that's just adding DLC. If you feel like the game has been chopped up and that's where all that DLC came from, then you have a legitimate reason not to buy the game in its original form, and then possibly reevaluate the purchase once that DLC comes out. The fact that there's no definitive edition, it sucks, certainly. If Borderlands 2, though, had just constantly released more and more DLC and not made Borderlands a pre-sequel, I think that would have been a lot better until they got to the point of Borderlands 3.
I will fight with
So
honor.
I could certainly have seen it working really nice if they had constantly added more DLC throughout the years. Moving on, we have a Komatsu article. Undead Darlings, No Cure for Love was shown at the Anime Expo 2019 teaser trailer. So I assume these are undead zombie girls. Not all zombies in anime are shown as green, grotesque characters. There was an anime that came out where it was zombies in a singing group, and I think that started a new trend. And since they're so trend-centric, there's something to this. Now, when you look at the art here, you're seeing green zombies that are way worse animated, so maybe these are live anime girls fighting the zombies. This mostly looks like a generic dungeon crawler, though. Doesn't look like there's anything amazingly special or interesting about it. It's just in the turn. In general, Komatsu has Anime Expo 2019 listed here with, I think, a full list of what's going to be shown and announced, or what has been shown or announced. Crunchyroll is going to have a panel. Interesting. So, I'm not expecting a ton of stuff from Anime Expo, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is 2 or 3 big, worth mentioning games, and maybe even a dozen just kind of mediocre anime games that get announced at Anime Expo. And it makes a lot of sense to start seeing more of this year in and year out, is that it's been maybe 3, maybe 4 weeks since the end of E3. If any anime game had been announced in E3, it would have been overshadowed by AAA games and their trailers. So now you have a much more interested market to show it at a anime show. And they've been doing the same with like Comic-Con, where they've been showing off video games at Comic-Con, Marvel comic book style games, and I think we'll see more of that too. I think Comic-Con in particular is probably itching to not be so comic book focused and more comic movie focused, comic figures focused, comic toys and collectibles focused, or comic video game focused. Let's see. TecRaptor has an article here. Need for Speed World Offline mod lets you play a cancelled game. Let's see. This cancelled multiplayer game to hop back in allows people who... How would you have gotten the game though? I guess it was a game that was playable at one point, and then they just canceled it rather quickly. And I guess if a game is multiplayer only and is canceled, then, or shut down the servers, that's it. And that has been the growing and obvious problem with online only players for a long time.
Access denied. Converting stored energy.
TecRaptor has an article here. Exclusive Wide Right Games announced a closed alpha for Freedom Finger. Why TecRaptor is getting exclusive, I don't know. I don't really believe in exclusives as a way. If you're trying to disseminate news, getting exclusive is not in that idea. This is clearly sponsored more as much as it's exclusive. But that's what exclusive always meant, is that, hey, we're doing a favor for this specific journal site, so you give us a good initial show. If it had an E3 trailer, it wasn't a major secret. There's nothing here that looks particularly interesting in this game either. I really just wanted to rant against exclusive more than anything else. Next, we have a TecRaptor article. Rumor, at least they're starting to label their articles. I guess that's helpful. Rumor, there will be 4 Last of Us 2 editions at launch. That's believable. PS games, PlayStation 4 games in particular, have been pretty bad about having 3-4 different editions. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a basic edition, a deluxe edition, a supreme edition, and then a collector's edition on top of that. So it's a rumor right now, but it's totally believable. I believe last recording on Komatsu we saw the pencil drawings of the Shanti 5 Studio Trigger opening animation. It seems like the pencil drawings now have been colored in and animated, so we can actually show off the entire trailer entry. Shanti being the half genie girl who's fighting always against this pirate lady here, usually, and looks like there might be some new characters coming into the story, or I don't know, I haven't played the Shanti series, so these might be old characters, but yeah, it looks like it's a standard Shanti game, and the Shanti games, I definitely want to cover them and play them. Studio Trigger animating the opening is possibly deceptive if you don't recognize and remember that often Japanese animation studios are hired to make openings for anime shows that they don't make the rest of the show. So the game itself will probably look way less linear than this. This is an artistic style for sure. Very sharp, long lens and ears and sharp hourglass figure there.
I will fight with
yeah,
honor.
she'll probably be much closer to like a 16-bit animated style that we've seen in previous Shanti games, and almost certainly it's going to come to the Switch and PC. Studio Trigger, though, is, I guess, getting a little bit more into video game animation, because there is also a Kill La Kill game coming out, and Studio Trigger animated that too. They animated the anime of Kill La Kill. I'm not sure if they animated the game or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Game Sutra has an article. Keyboard Studios opens a recording studio for game localization in Brazil. It seems like Brazil is becoming a new market to focus on, particularly in video games and localization. I have been seeing over the past couple years more and more games that claim to support Portuguese Brazil as a language on Steam.
Job's done.
So that, I don't think anything fast will happen here, but eventually I do suspect Brazil will be the 4th or 5th language by default you pick, where you would make a game and localize it into like English and maybe Chinese, maybe Japanese, maybe German, and then you might start going to go Spanish at some point in there too. And after that, you might be tied between Portuguese, Brazilian, or French. Moving on, Komatsu has an article. Access games to localize Otome. Remember, that's Young Maiden titles for the Switch in 2020. So let's see, do we have a list of what these games are? So Code Realize, Guardian of Rebirth, Code Realize Future Blessings, Caller X Malice, Unlimited, Cafe Enchante, and Pio4A, which is the working title. Alright, that's a decent handful of visual novel games, but they do tend to come out pretty quickly. And if they're getting localized, that means they're coming to English, I would assume. And since this was announced at Anime Expo, yeah, they're coming to the West, so that's English. And I was saying earlier, yeah, I want to see more otome style visual novels come to the West. Like if you have any young daughters these days, or soon to be teenage daughters, don't be surprised if they start getting into otome visual novels as one of their favorite forms of games to play. I've seen more of these more cell phone games that act like otome stories too. So there's definitely growing demand in the West for these things. We have a game here on Steam called Fruit Crawler. This is just Snake. It's just a low effort single screen Unity Snake game. We haven't seen a lot of single screen Unity puzzle games in a while. It's $6.99 English only. Nothing here worth mentioning. At this rate, it feels like I probably am not going to actually get all the victories I need. So I may have to play a little off screen. That's not going to be a big deal though. There is a new thing about Borderlands and shift codes that's interesting. You can now redeem gold keys online at borderlands.com. Just click the shift logo on the top of the page for help. Click that. So currently what I'm having to do is when I get a shift code like this for PC, I copy it into a blank notepad file, which means if I reset my computer, I probably am going to lose that code. And then I launch either Borderlands 2 or Borderlands the pre-sequel. Eventually this will also be Borderlands 3, but I don't own Borderlands 3 and it's a Epic Store exclusive right now for the first 6 months. So then you have to launch Borderlands 2 or the pre-sequel and put it in the app. The whole idea of the concept was to have people launch the game so they might actually play it. So inherently what they're saying is we've given up on caring about if you actually play the game when you launch it. We just want you to redeem the shift codes so that hopefully at some point you'll play it, which will be very helpful because that means no longer on my external secondary hard drive do I need to have Borderlands 2 and Borderlands the pre-sequel installed. This probably though also requires you to log in, if I was to guess. Let's see, because I don't see how you could go to borderlands.com and not have like a VIP account. Let's see. So under the website it says redeem code.
Your thirst for victory is formidable.
Yeah, you have to be part of the insider program, it seems. Right. Alright, so I'm gonna just paste this code in there. I wonder. So it said success. I don't know how that would have worked though. At what point did I tie Borderlands.com into my Steam account? Like that would be helpful certainly in the long run to not have that installed, but it is also a little weird, and it really is going against the general concept of the shift codes engine, which is to make people play more. Like, if you don't even have to launch the app to get the keys. Okay, fine. Moving on, TecRaptor has an article here. Universe Sandbox price is going up in the new future, says devs. Don't fall for this trick, I say. Particularly in this game, in the case of a game like Universe Sandbox, which was probably early access and has very little chance of ever being a polished product. But yeah, do not get strong-armed into buying a game. I got strong-armed personally into buying Shovel Knight, but I was also recommended to play Shovel Knight by an actual fan, so I did that because they said the price was going up. But don't be like me, don't fall for these tricks. Let them raise the price and then evaluate it at the new price once it's a finished product out of early access.
Converting stored energy.
TecRaptor has this article. We already talked about this. Hearthstone says card changes have nothing to do with China. Blizzard says, I agree. I think it has to do with a Islamic country in Sudan, or just SJWs being in charge of the art. I don't think it has anything to do with China, though. That's my personal opinion. I think it has to do with something else. Hearthstone has been in China, so it makes very little sense that they would have to change or censor their game. It makes a little bit of sense, but I just don't think that the censorship board is re-evaluating old games that often, or would look at a game that has already been kind of approved. But maybe. I think they did say something along the lines of they were going to reevaluate old games to follow the new standards, but I still don't really believe it. I don't really see the benefit of Blizzard taking all the heat and saying it has nothing to do with China, when they could just say, oh yeah, it has to do with China. Like, I think all game companies forced to censor their games because of Chinese censorship should say it has to do with Chinese censorship and put it right on China, so it doesn't blow back on them. Next we have a game on Steam here called Song Beater Quite My Tempo, which this is just another one of clones of Beat Saber. Early access VR game for $13.49, English only, 30 achievements. I don't see any reason why you would want to buy Song Beater versus Beat Saber. Beat Saber is clearly a better choice. TecRaptor has an article here. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is targeting mid-July for Switch fixes. That game particularly runs bad on the Switch, from what I've heard. Wouldn't be surprised if every version of the game needs some touching up here and there. But whatever. Like, I don't know why you'd specifically want to have that game on the Switch anyways, other than the fact that it gives you portability. Portability at the expense of a lesser quality product. Next is a game on Steam called The Prophecy Lies, which is an RPG Maker looking game. I have no interest in that. I've actually not seen too many RPG Maker games lately. $5.94 discounted, English only. I believe at this point that has that means we've done everything. TecRaptor has the same article. Zektronic makes its entire library free to schools, some schools, public schools, and educational programs, which you have to send your name and title, your organization's name, title, and tax ID number, a link to something online that proves your affiliation with the organization, what games you want licenses for, how many computers the game will be installed on, where the computers will be located, how many students will have access to the game, how you plan to use the games, the curriculum as a reward, after school club, etc. An after school club is an interesting idea, certainly. Games are T-rated by the ESRB, but there may still be some objectionable content in them. I didn't even think... I think a lot of them probably shouldn't be rated even T, but they are complicated games, and that might have gotten them the T rating, certainly. Libretro has moved from the Mupen 64 Plus Libretro core to the Mupen 64 Libretro NX or Next core, and they're no longer working on the original core, which means Nintendo 64 emulation on the Raspberry Pi 4 will probably be better once it all gets working, and even on the older Raspberry Pis, the next version will probably get a little bit better, but probably not that much better. I think it is more of a hardware power and CPU power issue for Nintendo 64 emulation than it is coding, although it may be that the Nintendo 64 emulator is pretty badly coded too. It's newer and it requires a lot more work to get things working. TecRaptor has an article here. Torchlight is free on the Epic Games Store, and July 11th, Overcooked is free now. Torchlight is a good game if you're into getting games on the Epic Games Store. Getting that for free is a good, decent Diablo-esque game that is made from the original creators of Diablo. Although, arguably, at this point, playing Torchlight 1 and then Torchlight 2 doesn't really mean too much, because then there's another Torchlight that's being developed as like a mobile game, and it's not. And I think the team that made Diablo that went on to make Torchlight have now moved on to make something else, but I can't even remember what the something else is. Gamasutra here has this article. I think we already talked about this. Shovel Knight has surpassed 2.5 million sales. Might be running into some duplicate tabs. We have a game on Steam here called The End of an Age, Fading Remnants, which is a RPG Maker game. This is the first time I've ever seen anybody try to make a fake Steam cover, where they're just putting pictures here as an ESRB rating, and that's probably trademark infringement to use the Steam logo in such a way without permission. Anyways, this is $4.49 discounted, English only. No way a game worth playing. We've got about 4 or 5 more things to talk about. We have 1001 jigsaws, 6 magic elements. So whoever's making these jigsaw puzzle games is continuing to make these jigsaw puzzle games. $2.99 with a bunch of language supports. But no anime girls, no nudity, or anything like that in the jigsaw games, which is surprising. We really haven't seen anything too scantily clad so far today on Steam, but it does seem to come in bursts. Next we have Click Raid 2. I imagine the scantily clad games and adult games come in bursts because they are under more scrutiny and withheld for approval until a specific day. Click Raids 2 looks like it's a clicker game, although it's tagged as an RPG, massive multiplayer. Early access for $19.99, online only with in-app purchases. This does not look worth playing at all, either in single player or online. Let's see. And the winner of the longest name is finally on Steam. We have alternate Jake Hunter, Daedalus, Awakening of Golden Jazz, or in Japanese, the exact same title, / prequel story of Detective Sabaru Jingu Daedalus, the Awakening of Golden Jazz. I believe this is an adventure / visual novel game. There's been a lot of talk about this, so it definitely does deserve to be on the follow list. But yeah, I think it probably is just mostly an adventure game / visual novel. $39.99 is not the price I was expecting from it, but I guess because it's more of a niche product, I can understand why the Japanese would try to charge that much. Meanwhile, if you wanted the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy, you're paying $20.99 right now with 30% off. So that's probably a better use of your money. This will go on the follow list though. Honestly, I think only about 4 games have made it to the follow list today. I have no idea what this is. Contra Collection came out. I don't think I really have any reason that I'd want to play the Contra Collection though. Even if it is on PC, I'm not sure it is. Gamma Sutra has an article. Nintendo Switch Online now has over 10 million subscribers. It took Nintendo Switch a while to get to that milestone though. But it was at 9.8 million 2 months ago. So to get 200,000 more subscribers, it took them 2 months. That's quite a lot. And I think part of the 9.8 million that got onto Nintendo Switch Online did it because of the Tetris Battle Royale game that came out. And Nintendo Online has yet to really be a good offering at all. It's not a good offering. It's cheap though. It's like only I think $10 a year or something like that, maybe $20. It's not going for a full $70. TecRaptor has an article here. Grid reboot is stuck in the pit stop until October. I think we already talked about this, but yeah, Grid has been delayed. It's better for a game to be delayed than released unfinished, I suppose, particularly a racing game. And then I mentioned this, the Borderlands 3 cosplay guides. They've redone the art in all of the characters. So Maya was in a Hyperion yellow outfit, this exact same style, it's just black now. She's also in her hood, and her blue hair is, I think, slightly different. Maya, I believe, as a character, is going to be very de-emphasized in Borderlands 3. You're gonna see that very slowly that they have shifted some of the outfits to be a little less scantily clad, particularly Mad Moxie, and just have a lot more cloth and fabric on them in general. This whole cape thing was not something that I think Maya had in Borderlands 2. And the color palette is black because Hyperion yellow was a big deal in Borderlands 2. It's not so much a big deal now. They're giving a little accent of yellow. But as actual cosplay, this is so focused on the outfit, and that's not what most cosplayers do. Let's just be honest here. Actual cosplay players, more often than not, are showing off as much skin as they are fabric and costume design. Here, Mordecai is a great example of just ridiculousness of what they want you to depict him as. He's got almost all of his face covered. He's got a beard. He's got goggles. He's got fingertip to toe tip cloth everywhere. Like, there's not a bit of skin here at all. Why would you want to cosplay as Mordecai in the first place? It's silly. Really, really silly. But, okay. You can go fingerless gloves. That's as much skin as Gearbox wants you to show, is your fingers. You know, a lot of clothing, I would argue, is about being comfortable in your own skin and being a little free to dress a fancier full. It's like going to the beach in a lot of ways, and yeah, if you went to the beach and you were covered head and toes, people would look at you weird. If you're cosplaying as Mordecai, I think people have a legitimate reason to look at you weird. So they've really redone Moxie in particular. First of all, I'm fairly certain she had tattoos on her chest and bust that have been removed in this animation in total. They are still going with what arguably I would say in this animation is unattractive, saggy cleavage. And there's one part that looks like it's a bra and the other part that looks like it's part of this bustier. But this is the most scantily clad you get. There's covering up most of both arms, and they have removed the underwear that was the main thing, or the side of her dress in Borderlands 2 was exposed to show the side of a like thong underwear, and that's gone. They've put this heart tattoo on the leg lower, and they've otherwise covered her up from her toes in very knee-high boots and different types of stockings. So it is just this gradual change of the characters and putting more and more stuff on it. I don't even think it's really a conservative, like we don't want to show skin idea so much, although she is also, I think, being depicted here with no scars really at all, where all the characters before had scars all over the place, and that was part of the art aesthetic. I think that's probably true for all the characters. I think this really is just somebody that doesn't understand fashion, or just the general concept that less is more. The Tina character as a teenager, they've taken the general concept of what she was depicted as in Borderlands 2 and aged her up a little bit. She's still got band-aids on her elbow, where I think she probably had some band-aids on her face before, and she's wearing these bunny ears. So she's oddly getting short sleeves where everybody else is getting long sleeves, but it's maybe just a bare midriff, barely a little bit of midriff exposed, and then just torn up and bandaged over jeans, and that's it. Just shoes. In particular, Tiny Tina in Borderlands 2 was living by herself and a little crazy, so her being able to even have this much quality of clothes that aren't torn up and ripped up is, I think, a little uncanonical, but maybe the Firehawk and the other main characters took her in and actually did a good job of caring for her. But the whole point is that Roland was kind of caring for her in the game, and Roland wasn't really bringing her into Sanctuary or doing anything like that. So yeah, if you're proud of your body and you want to show it off, your best bet is to do the female Psycho if you're female, or maybe see if you can get away with doing the male Psycho if you're female. Otherwise, you're not really close. And I would say the Psycho's outfits are actually way more thought out, with the tribal tattoos that were on all the characters and the scars and just the masks and simplistic orange pants with knee pads. And you don't have to get crazy with it. Here they have a whole focus on different chest patterns and things like that. It'll be interesting to see if there aren't actually any darker skinned characters in Borderlands 3, and then the cosplay guide emphasizes that they want darker skinned characters in the game, or cosplaying. I don't know, maybe the cosplay locations, the events that like Anime Expo certainly would be a place where there's probably a lot of cosplay going on. Maybe they have just gotten to the point where they're particularly getting more and more strict about how much skin can be shown. But really, it's not Gearbox's or Borderlands' role to say, hey, the characters we're making, we want you to be wearing way too many layers and way too much clothing. And that's a harder cosplay too for somebody who just wants to do something generic. I wouldn't do a Borderlands 3 character because that's going to take a lot more time. That's something I guess I would need some outside information from people who actually follow the cosplay scene a lot more. Or I bet some of the events are getting a little bit more strict, but I wouldn't be surprised if there still are adults only midnight cosplay fashion shows going on at most of them. Let's see, I'm on the Humble Bundle site. It doesn't look like there's a new Humble Bundle. There's the monthly Humble Bundle and the PlayStation Games Humble Bundle, and that is that. And since today is Friday, what we'll do on Monday is we'll do the Asian account Tavern Brawl, and we can see that this will end in like 5 days, so we have plenty of time, and we otherwise have done every other account. So let me just go quickly through my Twitter feed and see if any news happened. Right now Anime Expo is going on, so like apparently 50 minutes ago the Gundam 40th anniversary panel started. So Mobile Suit Gundam 40th anniversary has a trailer, but I don't know if that means there's a real game. There's a Code Realize Guardian of Rebirth is coming to the West in December, which we kind of had already seen that. A game called Ghost Parade launches in November. We'll talk about that on Monday. It's not super surprising that there's no big news happening right now, as we're in between what easily could be a 4-day weekend for most people between the 4th of July and just Saturday and Sunday, where a lot of people come get Saturday and Sundays off. A game called Cafe Enchante, that's probably Pifore, is coming to the West in 2020. Yeah, a lot of these articles are things that were mentioned, but they didn't have images up. Komatsu didn't, so we'll get some better pictures of them, but there's no reason to really talk about them right now. Let's see. There's a meme picture of Master Chief teaching, I think, one of the Disney princess characters from Tangled, I think, how to shoot a gun. It's cute and all. It's probably viral marketing, if I was to guess. So I wouldn't get super excited, and it's certainly not going to indicate that there's any kind of crossover potential for those two very different franchises. Anyways, that's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon. Also, remember the Steam Summer Sale is still going on. It would be very much appreciated if you friended me on Steam and gifted me a game off my wish list. That's a great way to one-time support my channel. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.